What's up, home dog? So today we're talking about diagonal pulls. Now I've heard you're supposed to have some kind of hook in the intro of your video just to make sure that people actually keep watching. So I'll just put a before and after picture of my lats.
Welcome, Harry, to Diagon Alley.
And of course, I'm not going to promise anyone similar results, but I can say that diagonal pulls have been absolutely instrumental for improving my lat development. So in this video, we're going to go over what is a diagonal pull, how it is different from a horizontal or vertical pull, how it's sort of a hybrid, and then we're going to go over a bunch of different exercises to get you headed in the direction of bigger lats. So broadly speaking, pulling movements are generally classified into either vertical or horizontal. Horizontal pulls are also known as rows. So in my book, I divided them up into those two sections. However, there is a continuum between a vertical and a horizontal pull, right? So you have pure vertical, pure horizontal, and then you have this entire swath in the middle that is actually highly effective for training the lats. And the lats are one muscle group that took me a very, very long time to figure out how to properly train, about 7 years. Hopefully you make that journey a little bit quicker than I did. And the trouble is, as with a lot of different weak points, if you have a weak point, specifically at the lats, other muscle groups can take over. So it's entirely possible to do a row with basically no lats. Okay, if you're rowing high, you can pull with your arms. Same thing with a vertical pull. It's going to be harder to avoid the lats, but if you're finishing your pulls like this and you're shrugged up, it could just be like some kind of weird hammer curl with a little bit of rear delts and traps involved and getting very, very little lats. At the very least, the lats might not actually be the limiting factor and they will probably stay small. The strong points will get even stronger, which makes your problem even worse. So biceps, traps, teres, rear delts, rhomboids, a lot of other areas can just say, nope, sorry lats, you're not getting very much attention. So if you want to give them more attention, try these movements. The first movement is a standing cable pullover. Now in my book, I put these in the vertical pull section because they are closer to that, but they are still not really a true vertical pull. Now one good thing about this is that it takes the biceps out of the equation. So when you're doing a pull-up, it's quite a bit of biceps, and if you are arm dominant, it might be just like primarily biceps. If you're torso dominant, it might be pretty good, but again, if you're pulling with your arms, if that's your instinct, if that's what is actually strong, it's going to be getting more of the stimulation. By keeping your arms straighter, it's going to take the biceps out of the equation because there's no elbow flexion, right? If anything, if you keep your arms totally straight, it's going to be more long head of the triceps compared to biceps. So that's why when I'll do them, I will actually bend the arms a little bit so that it's less triceps and more lats. Another thing I will do is kind of like, it's called a lat prayer, Menno Henselman's. They're very, very similar movements. You want to bring your chest up in the bottom position, and you'll probably find that this makes it more challenging. So instead of like crunching down like this, you almost want to bring your chest up in order to get more of a lat contraction. And over time, you'll actually be able to have more of a mind-muscle connection. And I do think that mind-muscle connection sometimes is overrated, but when it comes to a muscle group that is a weakness and you're having trouble actually activating, it can be worth focusing on. Doing higher reps, lighter weight, really focusing on the quality of the movement rather than just loading up some heavy weight. You can also do dumbbell pullovers. Again, this is not really a vertical pull. It's certainly not a horizontal pull. Because the dumbbell is moving in an arc, it's impossible to use the biceps. It's going to be, again, more triceps. If I had to choose one, I would definitely pick the cable. I think it's a superior movement. But the dumbbell does give you a sort of unique feeling stretch in that bottom position. And people might say that the lats do not work when you're fully overhead. I think this is true when the resistance is going downwards. But again, if you're doing a dumbbell pullover, the resistance is not going down in that fully lengthened position. It's going in the completely opposite direction because of, gravity. The pullover machine is also a really, really good one if you have access to it. If you don't worry. I think cables are going to be just as good. I think I actually prefer cables. The machine is pretty good. It's a favorite of Dorian Yates. It does match the entire range of motion of the lats pretty well, fairly constant tension, etc. But I actually find that being able to cheat slightly with the cables is definitely a major benefit. Another thing you could do is sit on the ground and put your feet out in front. And it's almost like a standing cable pullover, except you're sat on the ground and you're pulling downwards like this. So again, it's taking a lot of the biceps out of it. And I have found that this is actually one of my favorite movements. You can take these beyond failure. You can cheat slightly. Just focus on driving the elbows down, okay? Because shoulder extension, you're going to want to focus on the elbows more than just pulling with the arm. Again, especially if you are more arm dominant. You also don't want to be rowing like this because that is going to be traps. You're not focusing on protracting and retracting the scapula. You're really just focusing on driving the elbows down. You also don't have to go all the way up. You can stop around here because past this, you're probably taking a bit of tension off of the lats. So over time, I find that actually getting a little bit less range of motion is going to be better as long as you're focusing on using the correct range of motion. Another super simple hack that you can do to turn your vertical pulls into more diagonal pulls is just to scoot back in the seat. So instead of having your hips all the way against the pull down machine, you can scoot back just a little bit, which means that the pull is going to be more in front. Okay, so if you're scooted all the way in front, it's very easy to use a lot of biceps because you're just pulling in like this. But if you scoot back a little bit and now you're pulling down like this, you're going to find that it is quite a bit more lats. Also, if you have elbow issues, which I have had in the past and currently am working around, you're going to find that this is a lot more elbow friendly. Often the limiting factor when it comes to doing pull-ups, it's going to be either shoulders or elbows or wrists. Okay, so if you're doing a lot of wide grip stuff, some people find that it bothers the shoulders. If you're doing neutral stuff, that's pretty joint friendly, but it still could bother the elbows. And then if you're doing underhand chin-ups, well, this is very, very good for lats, but it can be tough to actually fully get in this position. So it could be tough on the wrists, could be tough on the elbows. And this is sort of the downfall of pull-ups, in my opinion. You're probably better off focusing on doing a mix of pull-ups and then supplementing that with these more flat-focused movements. By the way, consider this to be a mid-roll ad. If you're interested in more exercises, programming knowledge, cardio advice, equipment, everything, make sure to grab a copy. Nope, too forceful. Consider grabbing a copy of my book. Link is in a pinned comment down below. I make ad-free content, so this is the only way that I monetize my videos. Thank you so much for the support. Actually, a few years ago, I kind of stumbled across these by accident without realizing it. My gym had closed for Chinese New Year, and so I was just doing pull-ups in my apartment. So I could put my hands under the apartment doorway to the bathroom. I couldn't do overhand because it was just, not enough space. Also, the ceiling was really low, and so and the floor was pretty low as well. The entire thing was like just not big enough for me. And so the only thing I could do were chin-ups, but without full range of motion. And I couldn't pull like this because I would smash my head on the door. I had to pull slightly out to keep my head from, bashing against the ceiling. And so basically I was doing partial range of motion, like this when doing chin-ups. And my lats blew up. And it's one of those things where how you do the movement is very important. And at the time, I didn't really have enough knowledge of biomechanics to know why it was working. I just knew that, hey, it was working. But I think knowing why something is good is just as important as actually getting results.
Well, there's your money, Harry. Gringotts, the Wizard Bank. Take no safer place, not one.
You could also do these diagonal pulls, sort of N1 style. I've done them a few times. I haven't really fallen in love with them, let's put it that way. I think they're fine. I think they're absolutely worth trying out. Basically, you put your chest against a bench, and then you are pulling with one arm. I could see how they are biomechanically perfect, and I'll probably try them a few times again just to see if I can ever get the hang of them. But as of now, I prefer using bilateral both hands at the same time, just because it feels a little bit more stable, and I actually feel a better contraction that way. Kasim also talks about leveraging the rib cage, so the lats actually sort of wrap around the ribs. So if you pull slightly off to the side, obviously you can only do this with one side at a time. Otherwise, maybe you could do it bilaterally, but I would say just do one side at a time. You can actually wrap the lat around the rib cage in order to get more of a stretch. I mean, if you want to fully shorten the lats, it's going to be like up here. You do have to play around with the angle a little bit, because if you go too much, it'll probably be a little bit too much rear delt. So play around with the angles, and also start out pretty light. And I wouldn't cheat on this one just because twisting around that area is probably not the best.
World-class racing bridge. Wow, look at it! The new Nimbus 2000!
You could also try Ghetto Lat Pulldowns, championed by Alpha Destiny, or should I say Alex Leonidas. Basically, you put your feet against a power rack or something like that, and then you have the cable going diagonally, obviously, and then you pull down like this. You could do, a variety of different bar paths, and these look freaking amazing. I haven't tried them out, but I could see how they could be efficacious. Once you do enough movements, you can just look at something and you know exactly how it feels, and I can say that these are almost certainly money. You could also try to modify your rows by not rowing straight back, but by rowing down towards the hips. Again, this is sort of more diagonal because you're driving the elbows down and moving more in an arc, which follows the fibers of the lats. So again, if you're rowing like this, or if you're doing vertical pulls like this, that is just going to be a lot of upper back. You want to move in an arc for as many movements as you can. Now, do I think incorporating these movements over just getting brutally strong on your basic barbell rows and pull-ups, do I think it's going to be way better? Well, in my experience, yes. But that's because I am arm dominant and trap dominant, and therefore the lats have been a weakness for a long time. But if you are more lat dominant, it probably won't matter because you're just going to be using those for the more basic movements. So I would say take it on a case-by-case basis. Know thyself. These could really, really help if you are using other areas and you're having trouble to actually target the lats.
Hagrid? What exactly are these things?
They're goblins, Harry.
The fucking SARM goblins.
Not the most friendly of beasts. Best stay close.
And these are all pretty joint friendly compared to a lot of these bigger compound movements. If you're doing barbell rows, often the limiting factor will be your lower back. If you're doing vertical pulls, often it will be the elbows or other tissue. And so if you want to do higher volume, and I find that lats generally do respond to higher volume for a lot of people, they're not like the hamstrings or something, you're probably going to want to use a variety of movements and stuff that is more isolationatory for the lats. And I do think that experimenting in your training is something that is absolutely vital. Don't try to add in all these movements at once. Toss in one, maybe two, and see how you respond. I think a lot of people are of the opinion that they are genetically fucked in a certain area. Like, oh, I have high lats. Well, maybe, but maybe you're just not really targeting the lats, right? Like if you have big teres majors from doing a lot of like this kind of stuff, it might look like you have high lats when you just have small lats. Wait, for more training knowledge, consider picking up a copy of my book. Link in a pinned comment down below. Thank you so much for the support, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.